We're sitting in the main hall, and soon, Ryan, you will do your concerts number 13 and 14 with the orchestra. After that, when you return next time, it will be as chief conductor. Finally, we have arrived at this moment.
Yeah, it's very easy for me to say that I'm incredibly excited. That is a very obvious thing for me to say, of course. But it also seems very organic at the exact same time. This year, I've been saying to my partner, to many friends in the orchestra as well, this year was a sort of get to know each other even better type of year. All different types of repertoire, being able to work with different leaders, different combinations of the orchestra. How far can we stretch repertoire? And now that September is upon us, pretty close. It just seems like, now it's time to start. Let's really start doing some really special things and start making really great memories.
Yeah. So Stefan, about 2 years ago at this time of the year, Sakari Oramo did his last concerts as chief conductor after 13 years with the orchestra. And the orchestra was searching for a candidate. Ryan made his debut with the orchestra in a summer concert in 2019. Do you remember if Ryan's name was put up on a list right away?
I absolutely do remember that. You remember those kind of times when an orchestra gets on fire with the conductor, it's just nailed there. And this was one of those occasions. There was no question. You remember?
Yeah, I was playing that.
Yeah, you were.
Concert.
I remember.
Yeah.
It was just like we were searching, and I mean, 13 years with Sakari was a long time. And the orchestra was very committed to find the right one. But it was an electric week with you. So we immediately on to the list and to follow. And you were conquering the world at that moment. You were hired everywhere. And I was chasing you all over the world, I think, to make sure that you didn't sign elsewhere. So it was a very, 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 very warm and passionate memories from that period.
Marie, you were playing.
I was.
Do you remember that concert week?
Very clearly.
Yeah. Tell us. Beware, he's sitting next to you.
No, I think, it was just so striking. Obviously, technically fantastic conductor, but
Thank you.
How you connected with the orchestra, I think so many of us felt that connection very strongly. And your ability to sort of open up and get people to trust you as well is, very powerful.
Yeah. It was fun for me as well. And I remember being incredibly nervous. I remember I was preparing for this concert in Toronto, actually, where my partner was living at the time. And I remember thinking, okay, here comes the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. I never thought this was going to happen, And I remember actually seeing the orchestra in concert on tour in the Concertgebouw with Renee Fleming. Yeah. And I was sitting in the cheap seats with a friend, just wanting to see a nice concert that night. And I remember it very, very, very particularly. And so because I had that image, and also that image of celebrity as well, too, of saying, oh, I've seen them in concert before, coming here, you better believe I was prepared, It was definitely something that I took quite seriously. But then, as it often does, the nervous energy left immediately. It was very obviously a very warm atmosphere, as I've found with many Swedish orchestras, actually. The Swedish people in general. There is a very cordial, warm atmosphere, people wanting to work as well on the music. We were doing Dvorak's 8th Symphony. This is a piece that comes up quite often. You might consider it a war horse. But it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like this was a war horse. It felt like this is something that we're doing right now, and it should be important right now. And that's infectious, at least for me.
The orchestra wanted me to be very open with people who came, that we are in a search, that everybody who's standing on the podium can be a candidate, and we think that's fair.
Absolutely.
That you should know that. So
And this was said to Ryan, adding to his nervousness.
It was maybe not the same morning. I think I did it a little bit in advance, actually. That you mentioned that we
It
are
was
looking.
definitely after.
Yes.
And actually, in a funny way, as much of a nervous person that I can be, which thankfully, once rehearsal starts and concert starts, that always immediately goes away. Hearing that, it is a bit of validation of, yeah, we did do a good job. You know, great. So we can move on to the next thing. So thankfully that it calms it a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah.
So the orchestra was in a search, and this happened, the concert with Ryan in 2019. He was put up on a list.
Yep.
But then several concerts were cancelled because we, of course, wanted to book Ryan for more concerts right away.
Yes, I think we planned for return visits already 20 and but in 21, but we need to postpone a couple of times.
Pandemic.
Obvious reason, yeah.
Yeah.
So therefore, I know also that the orchestra was very clear about saying that we really want Ryan to be back, and we won't move into something else before we have properly met you again.
So 3 or 4 more concerts were planned immediately, but in the end, there was only 1 more concert.
Yeah.
So 2 concerts was the basis for making the decision.
When you see a super talent like this and the chemistry, then we need to act. And you graciously also acknowledge, saying, I will come and I will do this. And so
I do think for myself as well, I think what's also fair for the orchestra and for the staff is I had to make sure that I was capable as well too. I think it's really easy to do a concert and think, yep, this is great, let's do it, you know? But an orchestra in 2023 is a lot more varied now in the abilities and the capabilities and chamber music and recording and broadcasting and the digital world, which we're now very much so a part of, and being able to interact with that. I mean, the first concert that I did was Dvorak, Mozart, and Elfriede Andre.
Yeah.
Those are 3 composers. What about the other ones, you know? What if with other composers, all of a sudden something came up that made me uncomfortable or the orchestra uncomfortable? It's important, at least for myself, to have multiple chances and opportunities to make music. And was the first meeting, was that right? That made sense. The first date, you know, was that actually a really good date? Let's have a second date and see how it is. And then from there it became more obvious to me. I had to sit down with my family, with my partner, and say, is this something that is worthwhile for my life as well too? Everything pointed to yes.
Yeah. And Marie, I think when you say 2 concerts, Tony, it's 2 weeks crowded with music. And I mean, every day in your life is a progress and how we work, prepare. So and when you see that it goes in a direction which you like.
Absolutely. And I think also, I mean, in a way, it's more than just the concert, because the rehearsal days, if anything, are maybe even more important.
Totally.
How that interaction happens and the ground that we cover during those days was,
Totally.
I mean, so it felt like it was already a journey in those 2 weeks somehow.
Yeah.
And people maybe do not know this, but it's the orchestra, at least in this case with the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra, that has the final say by voting when no one else is present, just the members of the orchestra doing the vote. The Berlin Phil is famous for this, but
I actually don't know how many other orchestras do that.
I don't know either, but it was very clear. And in the process we had, you were deeply involved. And from day 1, when we spoke about that starter search, you were involved. And to me, as the chief executive, it's stupid to decide for someone like me. It has to be the orchestra. And you did a great job there, taking a huge responsibility. And you know, sometimes you told me, Stefan, can you please leave for a moment? Which I gladly did, because you had so great discussions.
But it was a team. I mean, you're so good at reading the orchestra. I mean, you sit in a lot of the rehearsals, and I think you're very aware of how the orchestra's feeling.
Absolutely.
during a week.
Yes.
And so
I'm
that,
running up and down in the staircase. How is the week?
Yeah.
we couldn't have done it without you, Stefan. You know.
But it was. We're super happy over the outcome.
So what does a modern conductor has to have in his or her toolbox? I mean, you've spoken about toolboxes,
Yes.
Stefan. What has got to be there in the toolbox?
The obvious thing is, of course, the musicianship. It's, of course, the base for everything. That is a great musician. I think that's for us at least the number one. And then, of course, being a great musician, it helps a lot if you have a great technique, and you have, which is very clear, a curiosity of repertoire. Of course, that you stand with both legs in the core repertoire, but that you also look into other corners of the music world, what's happening there. I'm willing to try things out. For us here in Stockholm, that's super important. And then also that we live in Sweden, and we feel a certain responsibility that you should maybe address also the Swedish music life and the Swedish music. And for me and for us, I think, as an orchestra institution, all of this was very important. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the chemistry, the passion, being the poster boy of the Stockholm Philharmonic, that's...
We have great photographers.
Yes.
Great photographers.
Need to be able to handle that, to talk about music, to conquer the world, because that's our ambition. We do nothing less than that. We want to be on top.
And also perhaps being an institution like this, how it works in society as a whole. I mean, not only in the music business, but I mean, reaching out.
Yeah, it's super important, and all of you musicians are also great in that. I can be in a room, talk to politicians and decision makers and people with a lot of money, and I can talk and be quite convincing sometimes. But when you enter a room, Marie, or you, Ryan, you know, a musician, a conductor, it's I'm just fading into the wall.
False.
Because but it means a lot. It's something you have to be able to do these things and to be there and take over.
Yeah. You mentioned Swedish music. So Ryan, what discoveries have you made?
Oh, so many at this point, honestly. Yeah. The first concert as chief conductor this September is going to be Sven David Sandström's High Mass. This has been one of the big discoveries of my life, I would say. I think it's also no secret that Sweden just churns out good composers around the world for some reason, and none of them are alike. They're all incredibly different and incredibly varied, which I really, really appreciate. Sven David Sandström has become one of my favorite composers. We're also super lucky that we have composers like Andrea Tarodi and Brette Böström and all of these incredible composers that are alive nowadays that people like to perform. Yeah. It's a special thing, and it's quite rare, actually, but thankfully it's something that I'm finding that's changing over time, quite rapidly, actually.
Speaking of repertoire, I mean, some people say that classical music is dying slowly. Is that true? I mean, to us, it doesn't seem true. I mean, looking at the audience we get.
It couldn't be further from the truth. I think as long as people want good music, there will be good music to be had. And for us, for people that primarily do classical music, that perform in the classical music sphere, just so happens there's a lot of really great music out there. And not only music that already exists, but music that's being produced nowadays as well, too. As long as people want it, it'll be there. I haven't met someone that doesn't want good music yet. Maybe when that starts to happen, then we should worry. But as of today, there is this hunger for great art, great music, great performances, connection with live performance as well. I genuinely have no worries, but maybe that's the American terminally optimistic side of myself.
No, but I don't think so, because I agree with you. I think in society of today, music is I mean, everybody's more or less passionate about music in general. Yeah. And then, of course, why shouldn't a huge part of the population also be very interested in classical music? And we have been very clear that we say what we are, and we deliver what we say we want to deliver, and that is mainly classical music. That's why we have this beautiful hall that we own, and we have a responsibility to fill it with the music of today, the Swedish music, the traditions. Then we can add other types of music as well, but this is the core value of what we do. And we see that audience are just filling in. I think we're going to a new sales record this season again. Yeah. which is fantastic. So I think it's coming. It will be there. That's my.
But I wonder if people have felt that for a long time, sort of centuries, in fact, because it tends to be also the average age of the classical audience is older than, I mean, and that would also be a fantastic thing if we could get a younger audience involved.
At least in the 21st century, in 2023, the obvious thing is we want people to come to the concert hall of all walks, all life, everyone, come. We also need to earn the opportunity to go into other people's communities as well, too. This is incredibly important and also a mission of mine for as long as I can remember. How can we expect people to come to us if we don't go to them?
Yes.
You know, that is a huge part of our jobs as musicians. Otherwise, who are we playing for?
No.
You know, we do, of course, have this wonderful concert hall that is designed for this music, and we love hearing it in here as well, too. And it's not centralized to this location either. The Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra is bigger than this building, you know? So, you know, it's always a work in progress, and perhaps it's cliche, but I do mean it. It's really about the journey to get there and not what happens when we get there. Well, there are going to be other things that we need to worry about as well.
It's like you said, Marie, people are probably looking at the age of the audience, but it seems, I mean, new people are added, also older people are added, so they go to classical music at a certain stage in life.
So you've spoken quite a lot about this, going to places where people are as well. And
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to that journey with you, because
Absolutely.
it comes from, I think you really are there, and it's a passion of yours to be there.
It's also how I started my journey in music. I grew up in a wonderful family, in a very underprivileged neighborhood, with not a lot of money at all. We were definitely what some people would call lower class in many ways. My parents worked extremely hard to get what we had, but had I not had free music lessons that came to my school, not me going to them, but free music lessons coming to me, different musicians coming in to give concerts, whether they be children's concerts, hearing Mars from the Planets for the first time with my local orchestra, that was a part of a field trip that I went on, having carpools taking me to concerts. Had that not happened, I wouldn't be a musician. Absolutely not. Had it not made it self-evident to me. That was, super important.
Stefan, the Stockholm Concert Hall Foundation owns the building as well. So we have the building and the orchestra as a unity. What implications does that have? It's an important part of...
It's important, and it's kind of unique. I mean, it's other parts in Europe also that's the case, but and it has this long tradition. What you spoke about, it was about in a society where classical music and music was maybe for the ones on the higher ranked parts of society. The aim was to make sure that we could spread it and that we could make it accessible to as many as possible. And this is one of the first halls in Sweden built where everybody makes an entrance from the same place. That's why the staircase is so wide and the doors are so many and the foyers are so big. And that's why it's named the Red Heart. That's why the chairs are red still 100 years later, because the passion for making people's life richer with music. We need to have chief conductors here that embraces all of that.
And regarding what Stefan speaks about here, I mean, your profession, being a conductor, has changed a lot, I think, in the last 30, 40 years or something. I mean, less bossiness, I think, and more cooperation. Would you agree with
No,
that?
I'm joking. I'm joking. Yes. The fact of the matter is, musicians every day get better and better and better, more and more informed. Who is the person up front to be a tyrant? That doesn't make sense to me. I do feel that the best way to get best music out of yourself, as well as out of the people that you're working with, is not only through encouragement, but by being sort of a people person and realizing, how can I create a positive atmosphere, and an atmosphere that is constantly cultivating something better and better. It's not going to be by nitpicking and poking at people and creating stress and creating an environment of we need to get this right now, otherwise why I oughta, it doesn't make sense to me. But if there is an air of, no, music is fun, music is about expression, how do you get the best expression? By simply being yourself, by simply feeling that you can make music how you want to make music. And then, yeah, as a conductor, seeing the big picture, piecing it together, and ultimately being in charge of quality control in many ways. Yeah. But, I mean, there's nothing without trust with an orchestra. There's absolutely nothing. There will not be a good result if there's not trust, simply.
Marie, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, totally agree.
But you meet different conductors every week. Do you still meet the other kind? I mean, the older kind?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And that gets a very different result. But I think it is a more old school way of working. And I think for us, I mean, we're going to have many weeks working with you. And I'm just very grateful that you have this open and very warm approach to the orchestra. I think that was something that was very and is very important for us.
So Ryan, you don't use a baton. You used to use one before, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Dropping it, did it have anything to do with this new generation conductor approach to?
Not at all, actually, no. It's a very simple answer, actually. I felt more comfortable without a baton. Every time I held a baton, I found that my arm would get sore because I would grip onto this thing, and I was always so worried about perfect technique and making sure it was clear. And I don't know, at the end of the day, I just didn't feel fully comfortable with it. And also I didn't feel comfortable pointing a stick at people. It just, for me, it didn't make sense. I have plenty of colleagues that they feel more free with the baton. Great, fantastic, go for it.
Still very much in use. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, look at Claudio Abbado using a baton. It's one of the most beautiful things you can possibly look at as a conductor. For myself, the day that I stopped using it, all of a sudden I felt more connected to the music as a conductor. I also felt more connected to the music as a musician as well, too. I felt like a conductor with a baton. I think it's better to feel like a good musician. And for me, that's how I was able to sort of achieve that. I can feel closer to the sound with my hands without holding a baton. But everyone's different, of course, really different.
It's interesting. You just took away your own title, conductor.
Well, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I do feel authentic as a conductor. I feel authentic as a musician. And it's important to have the fight for good music as paramount over the fight for the job in many ways.
But actually what you said earlier about that it's all about being able to feel free enough to express. I mean, that's the main aim.
Absolutely.
And yeah, whatever.
Absolutely.
I'm quite often sitting listening to a little bit of rehearsals, and often conductors, they let's do from number 7 again, and then they talk a lot about, but when you came, you say, number 7 again, I will try something differently. And you said, you changed, and suddenly the orchestra was like, okay, just watching, and that was interesting.
I constantly feel that I can do better. It's a constant feeling, and I think most musicians feel I can do this more informed, I can do this more meaningfully, I can do this with better sound, et cetera, et cetera. If I do feel that it's something that I can do better, then I guess it's important to be honest about that rather than pointing at other people and telling them how to do their jobs better, you know? I don't know, maybe one day I'll become a tyrant, and I look forward to that day where I can blame everyone else. But no, I think, like, on a serious note, I would rather myself also become a better musician in the process. It really is a no-brainer for me. If there's something I can do better, great.
But I think that's part of because when you said, let me try something different, it's maybe you feel like you're trying to do it better yourself, but it also it sort of pulls the orchestra in to also, it is that teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
That that was...
You mentioned Claudio Abbado, one of your role models.
Absolutely.
Yes. What made him a great conductor, in your opinion?
the people came first, then the music after that. That was something that was and is very poignant to me. Just looking at the man conduct, it's very beautiful not only to look at, but you can hear the sound that is very much so connected to it as well. And also, he is one of the conductors that really relies on his movement rather than talking. Now, talking is necessary. We have our voices, we might as well use them. But also, our job is not necessarily to be lecturers, it's about conducting the music. And the more time I can personally spend conducting and trying to get what I want through movement, that is preferable to me. Is it ever perfect? Absolutely not. Not for any musician on the face of the planet. And there are times when I do have to use my words, but I do know from my side, I'm very mindful of every choice that I make. If I am speaking, it's because it's probably something that's not incredibly obvious. If it's something, say, louder, softer, faster, slower, that's something I can show. And if I do say that type of thing, which, occasionally happens, it's probably because I didn't do it that well. So I'm not trying to over-humble myself or anything like that. It's just really a constant journey towards being better. And with Claudio Abbado, he just kept getting better and better. It's really as simple as that.
And Marie, speaking with orchestra members, often you hear that, well, he or she was good, but talked too much during the rehearsal. So that is, it's a thing that you hear quite often. I mean, that's the reservation you have.
Absolutely.
You want to play.
We want to play.
Yeah, we all do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back in September, Ryan. Chief Conductor Ryan Bancroft.
Yes, bravo.